All right. Anytime this next gentleman is on the sports card shop guest line, it's usually an indication a big event is imminent. It's, I believe, I talked to him before we went live here. This is, I believe, the fourth or fifth time we're doing this, and he knows this. He's welcome any other time of the year as well. But we definitely always do the preview for the national. So as always, I want to welcome Ray Schulte. Welcome to Sports Card Nation
Well,
once
thank
again.
you. And John, you've been so gracious. I mean, you've even had my son on, and
Well,
unfortunately, he's at school today. But you know, he loved it, and we always appreciate talking to you. You know that.
yeah, and right back at you, and Ryan is getting more involved and getting hands on, and I always appreciate to see us old guys, right? We need some of the younger eyes perspective too, because they're going to be the next ones to carry that torch forward. As
At some point, that is accurate.
Yeah, so hopefully later than sooner, but it's nice knowing that he's going to be
Right.
there, to do that and learning at an early age,
Yeah.
and I said that when he was on too, Ray, like he's getting an experience that kids his age are don't get, and that's, I'm sure he realizes that, and that's important. I think as someone who's in education, I sometimes I think we don't always teach kids enough about real time stuff and stuff that they
Mhm.
can implement. The old joke is you do algebra in high school and then you graduate and you're like, when am I going to use algebra again, right? But we don't necessarily teach, balancing a checkbook or a budget and stuff like that might come into play. So he's getting, real
Right.
time experience, and as you well know, the national is becoming a bigger event. It seems like every year that doesn't seem
Mhm.
like how could that happen because it is such a huge event, but yet it still raises the bar each year. Last year, record setting for attendance in Chicago, expanded, right, bigger floor plan last year
Yep.
in Chicago. So the show is getting the numbers bear that out. That's not a something to debate. That's just where the facts
Yeah.
lie. We'll start out with I think I ask you this every year or almost every year. What number national will this be for you where you're involved in getting it done?
Well, I started at 2010 in Baltimore, and
Yeah.
so this will be my 14th national. Uh, first time under new management, and hopefully more to come. But this has been a really great time for me because as much as the industry has grown and the national has evolved, coming into this year with kind of like a whole new, fresh approach. Take what was successful, what we've done, and just kind of keep adding to it and doing things that really kind of like thinking outside the box. So for me, this is we're not in June yet we're in at least I'm in full mode right now and planning and working with all the teams, professional teams in Cleveland, which is fantastic. Working with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame, things that we didn't really have a real handle on in the past. It's opened doors for us this year, so we're real excited. I'm very excited.
Does it seem like 14 to you? Does it seem like more? When you sit back and take a breath and think about how many does it? Like I'm married 25 years. It feels like I'm married 35 years. Does it seem like it's more than 14, 15, or does it feel like it's about that?
I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but it feels like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I have
No, I get that too.
these years have gone by so quickly, um, and it's really a testament to what the national is, and I'm just honored and fortunate that I get to be part of it. But it's much bigger than any of us, and You know, every year when I usually have the opportunity to take media and bring them down maybe on a Tuesday or a Wednesday prior to the show, and I kind of expose them to the floor. It's just amazing that they get so excited because it's not anything that they thought it was meant to be, right? I mean, who could ever imagine that kind of exposure and to see all the people and see all the exhibits and but here's the thing: the reason I bring it up is because I get very excited. I mean, every time I'm at that door looking into the show, I say, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "This is just unbelievable." And I think you know me well enough to know that for me, one of the reasons why I keep doing it is because of the hobby community. For me, it's all about making connections, making friends. You have accomplishments. You deal with challenges. You learn quite a bit, but it's all about when it's all said and done at the end of the show, how many new relationships have you cultivated? How many new things can you look back and say, listen, that was unbelievable experience, a once in a lifetime experience. And working with the people that I get to work with, it's just been unbelievable. So but I do believe, strongly, and people have heard this from me before. It's all about community. It's all about collecting. And it doesn't matter whether you collect trading cards, memorabilia, pop culture, Pokemon. It's the concept of collecting. And once you understand the concept of collecting, then I think you can create some beautiful memories, and that's what life is all about, right? Creating memories, whether it's music. Music does that, obviously, but I think collecting does too in a big way, and we're fortunate because I see in the industry music and collecting getting closer and closer in terms of the numbers of people out there that are gravitating to that. So, I guess it's appropriate that we're in Cleveland, the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'm sure a lot of people that will be coming to the National are going to spend some time at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they should. But, that's what it's all about, John. I mean, for me, at the end of the day, if I can make some new friends and see some old ones, and I can't wait.
Yeah, we circle. I know I speak for probably you and a lot of other people in the hobby and collectors, right? We circle that week of the year on the calendar, and we count the days down. I do a countdown as part of my social media. I use
Mm-hmm.
athletes and their jersey numbers to incorporate that to give the sports feel to it as well. And it's called the National, and you know exactly that it's really international. You have
Oh,
people
sure.
coming from out of the country, from Germany, Australia, obviously Canada, but other countries are they're circling that week as us Americans do, and they look forward to it too, and they make a trip, to the states for the national. So I know it's a national, but we had almost called it the international because
Yeah.
we have people coming from other countries, and that's the hobby. That's
Yeah.
epitomizes the hobby. It's a worldwide hobby. It's not
Well,
a
it's funny.
U.S.
Yeah.
hobby. But go ahead, go ahead.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just recently up in Toronto at the Expo show, and first of all, the number of Americans going to Canada is increased dramatically. There were a lot of ambassadors, a lot of influencers, a lot of young content creators that were up there from America, and I just retained. His name is Greggy, and I think he's like 14 years old. He's one of our new national ambassadors, and he's from Canada. But my point is that when we were up there, everybody was talking about the national, and for the first time, I've got media coming down from Canada to work on the national. There's exhibitors coming down and so it is really an international event. And last year I took care of about 50 fans, sports fans from London that came in and just for the national. Of course, we've got them from Australia, Japan, Germany. But yeah, I think with the expansion of the hobby, the way it is with international, people are coming here, and again, it's reflective of who we are, where we have Americans going to London, to Japan, and so that world is getting closer and closer and closer. Thanks a lot to social media, but also the shows that are out there. And I know that there's a huge contingent from Canada coming. I think they're going to have a Canadian night at the national. So that's what it's all about. It's kind of a destination for not only domestic but everyone throughout the world.
Yeah, and I've coined it the Super Bowl of the hobby because the Super Bowl week and the national
Mhm.
basically is a week. Everyone knows when it is. It's an event where a high percentage of the hobby is there, just like Super Bowl week. A high percentage of NFL folks and fans and former players and that sort of thing are there. So that's where I came up with. I've heard other people call it the hobby family reunion or collectors family reunion, because it's you got the show, which is great, obviously, and then you have the events, post show, trade nights, sporting events. You mentioned the Rock and Roll Hall. I'm coming in a day earlier than I usually do to hit that before the national starts. Get that, cross that off the bucket list, and then the rest of the week is all the national. And we talked about the internet with people traveling to the national from other countries. You mentioned how Americans are going to other countries in reverse in support of the hobby. We've seen this in the NFL, Ray, where they played games overseas, Mexico. We've seen other sports do that as well. You know, Taking it to the hobby, might we see a national related type show, maybe in a London or wherever, Germany, potentially like an overseas national with this kind of the same people behind our American one, maybe sort of bringing it, uh, sort of a home field advantage for those folks that can't make it maybe to the States.
Anything's possible, and I know that a lot of people had conversations about that leading up to this year. But as you mentioned, as we evolve, as we grow, yeah, I think there will be. I mean, I know the guys from London, and and they are very very involved with us. In other words, they'll come over and they'll look at what we're doing, and then they'll take it back. And not only will they take it back, but they'll understand how to utilize sponsors, how to kind of create that experience for the fan, and what the fans are actually looking for, and what really makes that experience worthwhile from a collector's perspective. And we've seen that. I mean, I can't tell you how many calls I've got from the London promoter and others who are basically just picking our brain, and I don't mind that, because I think it's a good thing. The more international we become, uh, I think it's going to grow the hobby, and I'm more from I guess the old school, where I always felt like organic growth is the best growth, and so for me, grassroots, and I'll travel to maybe 10 shows throughout the U.S. And Toronto, but and just to go and kind of communicate and talk to people, meet new people, get the word out there, be relevant in terms of representing the national, and I see others doing the same thing. But John, there's so many new shows that are popping up. Smaller shows, regional shows. That it's really kind of interesting and fascinating, because I'm from the old school, right? Remember brick and mortar, and that's kind of where the fathers and most of their kids went to learn about collecting, because you have the store owner would talk about, this card is, valuable because, this guy played in three All-Star games and MVP. Well, and you heard the story direct. And that's what was important, because that
Yep.
resonated with both the dad and the son. But now with the shows, it's easier for a family to go to a show and talk to the dealers and get that same experience. So the brick and mortar will always be extremely important, but the shows are so, for us, like for the national, we don't see that as competition. I see that kind of like, like it's kind of like another league sending us, all the people that have got involved in the hobby or want to learn more, and it's easy for us. Mike Burke he coined a phrase a long time ago. He goes, "If you can't find it at the national, it probably doesn't exist," and that's so true today. But you think about it, and I get questions all the time. Will there be grading there? Will there be authentication there? Any question they ask me, it's a simple, yeah, they'll be there, because everybody and their brother, whether you're the CEO of the company, no matter what category the company's in, no matter what relevance they have in the hobby, they're going to be there. And you don't see that in any other shows, really, where you have everybody there. So, you go to the national, you're going to meet people, that can, be in a position either to help you or, again, one of the things that I find that is important is to have references, have people you can call and talk to and say, hey, listen, this happened to me, or I'm looking for this. And the only way you get that is you go to like you go to the local shows too, but you go to the national, and those references are there. I mean, those are the key people. Even if you have customers, you say, well, I met the head guy from PSA, and he explained it this way. Well, now you're talking from strength to your local market, to your local collector. And I think that's what gets everybody excited, aside from all the other things you do. And needless to say, all the manufacturers, all the corporates, they have so many giveaways, and they all want to cut through the clutter. So it's great. That's how we grew kids. I mean, Mike, a long time ago, kids who are like 12 and under got on free on Sunday, and then Mike at one point said, no, let's do it every day. And so that started. But then the manufacturers and everybody else followed suit. If we're going to have kids come in, let's take care of them. Let's kind of expand it. And so, you started having pack wars and giveaways and things like that. And it's kind of grown, or it has grown, to the point now where, there's certain expectation about coming to the national. Whether you're Topps, Panini, Leaf, whoever, from a manufacturer side, it's going to be something special. And then you have all the others, like eBay, PSA, and whatever. I mean, so you have everything at your fingertips. And I think last year, what was so great is that we brought a lot more technical aspect of it, from companies that came in, that were able to show, the what I consider like the future of, how you can find cards, how you can find out what the value of that card is, how I can send it, how I can put it in a vault or whatever. Everything and anything question that you have pretty much can be answered by just attending the national. Now, having said that, and you may be asking this question, but for me, the most important thing about going to national is preparation. You have to prepare.
Yeah, I get that question now. This will be my fifth or sixth. I'm starting to lose track myself. And, it's the old wear comfortable shoes,
Right.
The tongue in cheek, wear deodorant. But you got to have a game plan. If you have a little bit of game plan, you don't have to, micromanage everything, but sort of having a game plan depending on how long you're going to be there the whole week, which is ideal. It's easier, obviously, because you have more time, right? But if you're not if you're not going to be there the whole week or the whole run of the show, that's where you got to be a little strategic and kind of set your days up and game plan. That way you don't miss anything, or if you miss something, you don't miss much, right? And you hit the things, you get the stuff you really want to do done. It was funny hearing the Mike Burkus quote, which I didn't know he said about if it isn't here, it probably doesn't exist. My first national, Eric Norton was doing his Fat Packs podcast, and he had me on his show. It was like the third day I was there, and he's like, "John, this is your first national. What do you think?" And not knowing that quote, I said, "Eric, if it's not here, it probably doesn't exist," is what I think. So I don't know if that's great minds thinks alike, or I just stole Mike Burkus's quote without knowing that it was his quote at that point.
But it is so true though. I mean, but even I mean, I'm a good point of reference. I mean, I going to the show, there's probably about 10 or 15 people that I want to meet, or I would like to see, just to say hello or whatever. And at the end of the show, there's so many times where I say, "Oh my gosh, I missed him, I missed her, or whatever." It's challenging for me too, and frustrating. So I always say, depending upon how many, I always say work backwards. All right, how many days are you going to be there? 5 days, okay. 3 days, okay. 1 day, you're in trouble.
Day, one day you try to make it at least 2. 1 day, and
yeah.
Man, I always say it's also the fastest week of my year, Ray. It's like if the rest of the weeks went that quick, you know what I mean? It just seems to go very fast, and it's a blur, and then we count down the days till we're already looking forward to the next one. But yeah, make you feel a little bit better. I think we all can probably say, man, I didn't get to catch up with so and so, and I think that's unfortunately it's par for the course. But that's how big the event is, right?
Yes.
Just because that list is so long of people you want to, say hello, catch up with, that it is almost impossible. And, listen, no one likes to talk more than me, but at some point, too, you want to enjoy the fruits that the show has to offer. So, I have to shut my big mouth and look at cards and maybe do a main stage thing. I've been blessed and fortunate enough to do that as well. So you gotta budget your time. Again, after the show too is a great opportunity to have dinner with friends and people that you want to kind of catch up with. It's a great opportunity.
Well, and I always recommend to people, and especially this year, you know, do your due diligence. Research the city in terms of restaurants and places to go. You haven't been there yet, but there was a place called the Flats that back in the day when I was attending Yankee games out there in Cleveland, it was brand new. It was like the place to be. It kind of died out, fell down a little bit. Now it's resurrected. Places like that, and Google it and find out, because for us that's part of the experience. Like you have a plan to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's great, because when you leave, we just want you to have such an amazing experience that those 5 days or 7 days or whatever it may be was well worth it. And hopefully many of the people will leave with cards and memorabilia that they'll treasure forever too. I mean, that's important as well.
You mentioned this, Ray. We're seeing a plethora of shows start to be born, and like you mentioned, regional, local. Even here in Central New York, we're getting shows in parts of New York that never had a show before.
Mm-hmm.
Small shows, 30, 40 table type shows. But this is an area that's not known as a hotbed for the hobby per se, but it's starting to gain traction. And all you have to do is follow social media, and you just see all the shows going on. So on the same weekend. Every weekend there's multiple shows in multiple states and multiple countries. Are you concerned? Is one thing I think about? I've been doing this 40 years. This is how my mind sort of works. Can we get to a point where there's an oversaturation of shows? The national has nothing to worry about. Like the
For
national
sure.
is the grand, like they call the Rose Bowl the granddaddy of them all. The national is the granddaddy of them all. But just shows in general, is there a tipping of the scales where we get too many and it can hurt the show circuit? Again, not the national, but just shows in general.
That's a good question. And well, for me, I think the oversaturation of anything is not necessarily good. But having said that, in my travels, when I go around, I always make it a point to get to know the promoter because I really kind of want to know where his or her head's at, in terms of, what are they looking to do? What are they trying to accomplish? And who are they trying to reach? And it's funny because there's so many different perspectives, and I won't go into names or particular shows, but for the most part, they're really, really good, and really what I call authentic, meaning they have the right mixture, the right understanding, and the right um, people in place to make it, a success. But like you said, we're still growing, and yeah, I never thought there'd be more and more card shows like for 30 or 40 tables. Maybe 100, 150, but they're really small, and trade nights are kind of superseding some of the local smaller shows. Where it's a brick and mortar or even a promoter says, I'm just gonna call out a trade night, which is not necessarily bad. But again, can you deliver the quality and experience that has been expected by your potential customers out there? And for the most part, I haven't seen anybody that's been really, let's say, negative in that respect. But it's something to be concerned about, and it's something to make sure. For the most part, all the people that I've dealt with are just like can't wait, are so passionate, just want to over deliver. But there's going to be factors that come into play. With growth comes more challenges, and how you deal with those challenges, it's going to be reflective of your success. So I'm positive right now, but cautious.
Yep. No, I probably carry the same sentiment. Most know this is not new news or breaking news. The National is under new leadership. When that was going on, were you worried that maybe your role would change, or your involvement would change, or take it back to that time? Were you sort of in flux, or not necessarily?
That's a great question because I wasn't in flux. I think I was at a point in time that I felt like I gave everything I possibly could, and was really in tune with the hobby. In other words, I've made a lot of friends, and I've kind of taken on my collecting experience, and I deal with a lot of athletes. So for me, I was in a good spot, and I was open to like, hey, whatever happens, happens. The three new managers spoke to me in Atlantic City and basically said, hey, you know, when this becomes official, would you be interested in pursuing it? And uh, and we had a great conversation because there was a lot of things that I've always wanted to do in terms of being able to think outside the box, and I kind of knew them from I mean they've been very successful at their shows, the Philly show and the East Coast National, and so I knew them from that perspective. And so I told them, I said, listen, I'd be honored if you guys, were to have me come and work with you guys, but um, you know, I want to do a lot more. And they said, you know what, we're on the same page. And so we came to an understanding that, they'd expand my role uh, maybe threefold in terms of, working the event and being more of an integral part of it. In the past, I guess the only way I can say it is that there was a respect that kind of let me do what I needed to do, and it got done. Um, but I always enjoy working with the team, and this is a great team, passionate, smart, uh, wanting to look outside the box, wanting to create that unique experience. And so for me, it was it was a no-brainer, I'm excited. I mean, again, what we're working on now and what I'm capable of doing is exciting, and it's part of growing or having the industry evolve. I mean, the one thing that I can say that I've really enjoyed over the course of the 14 years is that I've really kind of been in in with everything that's gone on in terms of involvement, because I deal with everybody. you know, I deal with everybody, and I can't tell you how many times somebody will come to me and say, "Well, we're going to be part of the national. How do we maximize our experience?" Or, I mean, as a sponsor or as an exhibitor, and I end up helping them because it's my choice, but I end up saying, "Hey, this is what you need to do. Concentrate on this, execute this," and I enjoy that because if we can move it a little bit, and take it so that there's more and more, say, satisfied and happy collectors, and then it resonates for me.
Yeah, well, I think I speak for the majority when I say we're glad you're doing what you're doing, and like you said, even maybe some new things and some new wrinkles you're going to be allowed to do with that role expansion, as you mentioned. I remember when I heard that there was going to be new leadership. I'm not saying this for lip service, Ray. This is I've had this conversation with other people. One of my concerns was like, I hope Ray gets to stay on because he's number one, he's paid his dues now for sure, and he's good. He's very good at what he does, and you'd be kind of. It's easy for me to say, but it'd be kind of silly not to go in that direction. So, with that being said, glad you're obviously still involved, and not for the purpose I get to talk to you about the national, but just for the continued success of the national itself, because your fingerprints are a big part of it, and it seems to get bigger and better each year. And whether you'll give yourself that credit or not, I'll give it to you from my chair here. And
I
so
appreciate
it
that.
was a little fear of mine that that wasn't going to be the case, but I'm glad that it was only a hypothetical and not a reality.
I appreciate that, and I would like to say too that making the decision was easy in the sense that they also supported me. I mean, I've got Christy Ayala, who works for the Philly show. She's working with me. Alex from East Coast National. So we've kind of bonded as a team, which again gives us three people now working on what one person did for the last for 13 years, and so that has made such a huge difference, and for a lot of different reasons. But both Christy and Alex have been fantastic, and looking forward to working with them on site when we get to Cleveland.
Whoop! Here we go. I'll shorten what I said since
All right.
I muted my mic. But my question was with the new leadership, um, what might people who have been to recent nationals, what might they pick up on that might be different to previous editions of it?
Well, I mean, we'll have what everybody loves, and that's that's the floor plan, the 750 exhibitors, the corporate area, TriStar Pavilion. TriStar has done a fantastic job for us as a third party vendor. David Gelfman with the Breakers Pavilion has been fantastic. So, you know, the good news is that those guys are back and going full force. Larry Ross, who really is like the floor manager for us, is back. So we still have a good core coming back, and I think what the new management brings is just again thinking about things that can add to the experience of the collector. And and I know that Joe, Jimmy, and Brian are all working with our sponsors, working with them closely, and that's important because the sponsors, in the corporate area, they contribute to the experience at the show. They bring in players. They whether it's eBay or PSA or Fanatics, they all bring in players too, and that that's reflective in terms of the overall experience. So, and the trade nights, we're going to have something that we're going to announce pretty soon, actually tomorrow. But it's going to be something that dealing with Dick Perez and a documentary that's coming out that we get the first screening for, things like that. And there's much more in the plans. I can't really divulge it right now because we're right in the process. But our relationships with the Cleveland Browns has been unbelievable. The Guardians, great. Cavs, I'm talking to the Cavs team, and they're all collectors. A young group that's all collectors. So I think the industry has done a fantastic job of kind of getting into the mainstream of corporate business. And like I said, with the media, it's we've got media like from Cleveland. Fortunately, we were there in 2018, and so they do have an understanding of what we can bring to the table. But like anything else, people change and change jobs and businesses change, and so we kind of we have to reorient some people. But for the most part, Cleveland is ready for this. I mean, they are excited about it, and I love the venue. I just love the IX Center. It's just a really friendly, conducive for an event like ours, and so we're excited about it and looking forward to it.
Piggybacking off that, Ray, this will be my first time in Cleveland for the Nationals. Obviously, as you just mentioned, it's been there before. For people like myself who have been to the National but not one in Cleveland, what could you say to how the Cleveland National? Obviously, it's with new leadership, things might be different, but compare maybe the Cleveland National to Chicago's probably the best venue in most
Sure.
people's if they were voting. You kind of what will Cleveland bring to the table? I guess is the short version of my question.
Well, I mean, Cleveland is really, really rich from a sports perspective. The history is I don't even know if I have to get into it with the Browns and the Indians and now the Guardians and Cavs, and so you have a community out there that is really, really responsive to sports and to collecting, and so the rich heritage. They do have some really, really great restaurants in Cleveland. Again, we're working with a lot of the I call them the Cleveland influencers to kind of help us with getting the word out about where to go. What's the hot market, what's the hot restaurant, And then, obviously the ball games and with the Guardians, and the Browns start their training camp, and the training camp is only like a mile or two from the convention center. So we are going to do some fun things in terms of getting people over there to the training camp and some experiences. But the other thing too is I feel like we've gotten to the point, and you probably know Brody the Kid. I'm sure you've talked to
Oh
Brody
yeah,
and
oh
know
yeah.
Brody.
Part of Hobby Hotline, part of Hobby News Daily, with me there.
I
I've
always.
known him. I knew him right when he was shorter than me. Unfortunately, I'm
He's grown
shrinking.
up.
He's getting taller. So now he used to look up to me. Now I look up to
Yeah,
to
I
Brody.
always, if I ever whenever I get a chance to talk about Brody, I do, because you know, the industry has always talked about bringing kids into the hobby, and Brody was the first one, what I would consider the first official ambassador that the National had. That his passion and his community perspective. I mean, he was fantastic, and he really did open up a lot of doors for kids coming into the hobby, because he was able to communicate to the kids, what was going on. But even more important than that, that you really didn't see, is that he'd reach out to a lot of the manufacturers like Tops and some of the others and get them involved too. And Brody, he did a fantastic job. And really, today we may have between 10 and 15 national media ambassadors. You know, basically all demographics are covered, which we're extremely proud of. But Brody was the one that started this all. It was Brody who kicked it off for me, and then I was able to meet Dr. Collectible at the Mint out in Las Vegas, and I said, it just came to me. It just said, you know what, you know, he needs to do exactly what Brody did, and not necessarily bring in the kids, but just the way he came across his passion, his community perspective and all that. And so when I mentioned it to him on the spot, he goes, "I'm in," and that's how we got started, and then it grew, and now like we'll be making more announcements of the ambassadors, and I just want to clarify one thing too, though, is that our ambassadors are not, what I don't consider them influencers. I consider them content creators. There's a difference. There's a big difference. These guys are very passionate, extremely passionate, authentic, really, really important. The community is to them, and how they can bring everyone together. Now, don't get me wrong; they could develop into influencers eventually, but right now, and that's what I like about them. And Brody's kind of grown. I mean, he's almost big. He's almost taller than I am now. But Brody will always be part of it because of what he's accomplished and what he's done for the National, and he continues to do. There's no question about it. But we have a really, really robust team that is out there now, like really kind of promoting the road to the National, our theme, and then our brand message, which is it's cool to collect. And the more times you can get that out there in content and throughout the industry, the more time it resonates, and more time they understand that. And so they've become like a reflection of the National in terms of who they are, what they talk about, and it's we still have a long time to the National, but they'll be out there and they're going to be promoting that experience, and that's what it's all about. So I think that will be something that people will see, that is kind of I say we evolved too. In other words, that aspect of it evolved, and we'll see more promotions, we'll see more giveaways, we'll see more interaction, more engagement on the floor. We've got some great opportunities. We got these huge digital boards that surround the pillars leading down the aisles, uh, and you'll see it when you get there to Cleveland. But we're going to utilize those for like spontaneous promotions, giveaways. Have people talk about who's on the main stage, who's signing in TriStar Autograph Pavilion, and because one of the things we want to do is make sure that everybody has an opportunity to know exactly what's going on. Give them a heads up, that so and so may be in one of the booths, in the corporate booths, or somebody is given an interview on the main stage. We're going to have Major League Baseball Network involved with us in a big way. We're going to do giveaways and promotions. So it's kind of really kind of I'd say it's like maximizing opportunities is the best way to put it, and being in a position to do things where maybe we weren't set up for it in past years. Now we are.
Yeah, and it's great. And I love, listen, that's a big platform of mine, Ray, with kids in the hobby, right? They're the next generation. I started as a 7-year old kid in 1979, long time ago. And
Mm-hmm.
here I am, 44 years later. So it's near and dear to my heart. I know Brody very well, as you know. I'm going to have to coin him now the Jackie Robinson of kids in the national, because he, like you said, he was the first one to really, you know, bring kids or be a positive influence for kids in the hobby. And he did stuff at his age at then, even now, but even then, I was scared to ask the teacher to use the restroom, and he's talking with Tops and Panini and asking questions. And I've told him this. I've told him this directly. Like, that's not easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem talking now, but the 12-year-old version of me would probably be hiding behind someone's pant leg rather than being able to do that. So the fact that he was able to do that, and I mean, kudos to him. The two you used, I used, two A words when I don't like the me personally, I don't like the word influencer. It's almost like lobbyist in Washington, where you sort of,
Sure.
um, sure. I have people, people come up to me and say, "Hey, you're a positive influence on my hobby, John," and obviously that warms my heart, makes me feel good. But I like to use the a word you use, one of it, ambassadors and advocates, right, for
Mm-hmm.
the hobby. I'd rather be known as that than an influencer. Less, if someone says you're a positive influence, that's
That's
I'm okay with that. But I like to consider myself an ambassador and an advocate for a hobby that's been very good to me over 44 years and continues to be that, and promoted in a positive light, and that sort of thing. So those are, and you mentioned ambassador, just such a great word, because I think it really drives the point home that you're proud of what you're involved in, and you're highlighting that to other folks, that whether they're already enjoying it or thinking about entering the space.
well,
I think it's
yeah.
important.
Well, and also too, honestly, we did really good last year in like working with the ambassadors, and basically, what it affords me the opportunity to do is plan ahead. We did something with Derek Jeter on the floor Thursday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, and took him on a golf cart tour. Before all the exhibitors are coming in, and I had all the ambassadors there, and so they were able to create content and be in a position to be somewhere that nobody else knew about it except for me and the guys from Arena and Derek. But that's kind of the way we'll utilize them. So we'll strategize with them in terms of having a game plan, knowing what's going on in advance, maybe talking to certain athletes because we want them to communicate with them and get a message out. Knowing who's on the main stage at 3 o'clock on Thursday, that's where an ambassador can really help, because then that can educate everyone else on social media that this is happening. And if we have 10 or 15 of those ambassadors out there, we're hoping that if somebody's in the eBay booth, or we know about it, they're coming, then we can get that message out there, and so people can have the opportunity. If that's a favorite player or the favorite corporate person, then they'll be able to do that. So that's something that we don't really talk about, but I think it's really important because, as again, the last thing at the end of the day is to say, well, hey, I wish I didn't miss that.
Yeah, and there's so much stuff going on that it's important to know, what's available to partake in, and then, have that's on the individual to say, well, these are kind of going on at the same time, but this is what I want to do. And then, sometimes you might want to get there early to make sure you can be a part of whatever that event is, whether it's a break, a giveaway, an interview, like you said. And it's nice to hear you sort of saying like you're going to utilize some of the internals of the IX Center that exists to sort of get that message out. And I think people will be happy to hear that. I just get lost, so I'm just walking around like, hey, how do I get here? I'm just where I need to be. So Chicago, I don't know, just the shape of it. It's great, but it's so big. I would always sort of have to get my bearings, but that's more of a me problem than the venue problem.
Right.
You know, it's a 5 to 6 days of event. I try to make it a week with other stuff around whatever city it's in. People attending, Ray, it's seamless. It looks like it so easy. I don't think they realize the details and the stuff that really is involved. I mean, would you say, when we talk about an athlete, right? The season's 4 or 5 months long, but they're still working that other 7 months, working out, training, eating right. The Nationals, let's say a week long, right? Is But the planning and this stuff is going on months and months in advance. And probably this is where I'm going with this. Is it a year-round thing, really now? Because you're planning the one coming up, and then you're probably a little bit thinking ahead to the next one. And I know you spoke about with logistics and hotels, you've got to do stuff 2 to 3 years out a lot of times too.
Yeah, well, we have a great team. We have a guy that does that, and that is his full time job in terms of hotels and for next year, the year after, but yeah, it has become. We talk about it all year round. We have conversations, and everybody is preparing for it, and in some form, some capacity, and so it is always part of our conversation. And the details of it, I'd say, typically in the past, I might be getting started. I kind of slow into it, right? But this year we started in January. I mean, I was really putting time in and having conversations and talking to people because it was a whole new team, and so I enjoy it more that way because I enjoy being able to max it out, and it's kind of like a challenge to me, in terms of in my job, and most people in marketing and PR, they'll tell you the same thing. Your job's never finished. It's not like you
Oh,
work on
listen, I always try to say hello at the event, and you're hard to track down. You're moving. You're always moving around, putting out little fires. I imagine, and doing things that need to be done to keep the show as seamless as it seems to the average person just in attendance. So you're not, I always try to find you, but sometimes I see you, and then boom, you're gone down an aisle, and I'm like, I lost them.
well, I do put
And I know
a
you're busy. I'm also know you're busy, and I'm trying to respect that as well
yeah.
too. So
I mean, I do. You do put out small fires, but for more importantly, I try to maximize everything. You know, if I know a player is available, if I know something's going on, I want to maximize that. So, you know, it does. It can wear on you, but it's, you know, if I didn't, I'd feel worse about it. You know, if I took a lax attitude, at the end of the day, I couldn't live with myself. But yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, again, you know, I keep thinking about Chicago. There's things I could have done, I should have done, or would have done. But you got to get over that, you know, because it is what it is. So, but planning, the planning stages, again, the fact that I have, you know, a team that I can work with now, it makes it much easier to get things accomplished and structured and be able to talk it out and maximize relationships, opportunities, but yeah, it's ongoing. It's always ongoing.
yeah, and you know, like you said, you're even during the event itself. It's not like you can sit down and I mean, I'm sure sometimes, but you're still got stuff that's going on during the event. It's not like, hey, my work is done now. I get to enjoy the show 24/7. That's not reality. And so that I like to say that because I don't think people realize that enough. Even when everything is kind of in place,
Mhm.
um, there's still other stuff that has to get done during the event itself. And
Well,
so
and the other thing too is like I mean, I work closely with the corporates, you know, or just even exhibitors, um, trying to kind of look at different ways of creating content. You know, if there's an opportunity to talk to somebody who I think would people would be interested in, like maybe a corporate CEO, then we'll have one of the ambassadors do an interview, you know, 15-second, 20-second interview for content. And same thing with athletes and things that so many things happen spontaneously that you don't even, they're not even planned, but you know, somebody shows up, something happens, and you want to be there, you want to be ready for it, and it takes a certain mindset. You know, once you open the doors and once you get to the venue, to be able to do that, and you're always looking for, media and opportunities because you want it to be the best it possibly can be. So.
I know you're busy, you know, like you said, whether it be year round or a lot more than the week of the show. Is there a part of is it the last few weeks before the show that's crunch time that is the most nerve wracking? Do you have a week? You know, I hear people like say, "Oh, it's hell week at my job," or it's you know, is there a week that you stands out to you like this is I got a full plate of stuff I gotta tackle. This is the week. Is there a week like that for
Well,
you, or not? Not necessarily.
you look at it different ways. I mean, for me, the challenge is like now where you've put feelers out there, you've talked to people, and now you just gotta, you gotta, seal the deal. And then what I mean by that is that, are they on board? You know, what are they delivering? What are we delivering? You know, what does it take? Those are things that are in the process of like right now we're working on right now. And so for me, when we get to the point like with the Cleveland Browns, it just doesn't happen overnight. You know, you have X amount of Zoom calls, you have X amount of presentations or talks, or back and forth, and it's just like just recently that we said, hey, okay, we're in, and so now it's a process of getting the details down so that both sides understand it, and when you structure it like that, then it gives you the opportunity to spread it out with your teams, respective teams, and then be able to say, all right, well, let's maximize it in this area, let's maximize it in that area, but getting that to the, I mean, I've dealt with athletes all my life, and doing endorsement deals or sponsorship deals. It's when you sign the deal that you're relieved. You know, fulfilling it is not a problem. So to answer your question, for me, it's like now, right now through maybe mid June is when it's kind of like the balls are still up in the air. Even though things have been discussed and agreed to, you still got to finalize them. And but once we get closer to the show, no, I'm actually a week, 10 days out. I'm fine, and I'm really excited to get to the venue, to get to Cleveland or get to Chicago, wherever it may be, because we went through the right amount and the right preparatory for the show, and so now it's just executing, and executing to me is not a job. I love that, so it's it helps out that and Buck Showalter was, I mean, he's a client of mine, and he's always said, and I've always believed this, it's all about preparation, and if you're prepared, you don't need to worry about anything else. You know, it'll take and run its course.
Yeah, well, listen, I got one more question. You kind of touched on it. I ask you this every year. It's kind of a tradition now. It hasn't been in Cleveland in a little bit. We're getting it. They're getting it back this year. I know it's been in other sites in the past. Baltimore's one. My buddy Danny Black lives there. I just actually went there for 3 or 4 days. Love to see it there. Is there? Might we see the national in returning to some sites that it used to be and kind of went away, or even maybe in some new locales?
Well, I mean, the exciting part about it is that the new management, I mean, they are totally on board about doing what's best for the exhibitors, what's best for the community, the hobby, and they are going to be very active doing due diligence, and I think I've been fortunate. I worked with all the leagues and all their fan fest and all their Super Bowls events, and so I know what it takes to go out there and talk to a venue, to a market, and there's pluses and minuses to every market, every venue, but I'm confident that the new team is more than adequate. They're actually, I mean, I'm excited that they will be out there talking and accepting uh, inquiries from markets throughout the country. So to answer your question, there's certain things that needs to be done in order to move it. I mean, if it can work out and it will be presented to the exhibitors at one of the shows, and then they decide, they vote on it. This year the new team presented three markets. I think it was Atlanta, Chicago, and the other one was Atlantic City. But they presented Atlantic City because Atlantic City made an offer that we felt that the exhibitors had to know about, and so that's why Atlantic City was in the mix. But going forward, you'll probably see maybe a different market. Who knows? But I'm confident these guys can do it and do it right.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, maybe some new eyes, some new thoughts in the process will expand it. But listen, wherever it is, Chicago, Cleveland, it doesn't really matter. I call it the Super Bowl, the hobby. We all circle the week. We look forward to it every year. When it's over, we're already looking forward to the next one, wherever it may be. I joke that you could have it in Siberia. People will come, maybe less, but people will still be there. And because it's just such a great event, and people look forward to it, myself included. Ray, as always, I appreciate. I know you're very busy. I appreciate you making some time for Sports Card Nation today. I always give the guests the last word. Give out the socials, national, your collectible meter, and where people can find out all that info ahead of time. Take your time there.
No, absolutely. On social media, follow us on NSCC Show, Instagram, X, and we're going to be opening up YouTube and TikTok this year too. So we're expanding there, and collectible media on Instagram for all the up to date information. Every Wednesday, we're collaborating with TriStar with new players that will be signing at the National, and then our website has been updated, nsccshow.com. For the latest information, you can purchase your autograph tickets coming up soon, but you can purchase your admission tickets and VIP packages today.
No doubt. I'm counting the days down. For me, I like Cleveland for very much the same reason I like Atlantic City. It's in drivable distance, so I will be driving rather than flying. That's always a plus, as anyone who travels knows, if it's driving distance rather than having to jump on the plane. So I'm counting down the days, and my job knows pretty much what week every year that I won't be there very much. So it's this week, and the National Week, I should say, and look forward to it. Always will, and we'll be there as long as I can get there. So looking forward to it. Again, Ray, I appreciate you making some time for us.
Thanks for having me on, John.
Thank you.